Hi everyone, today we are covering section 10.4 on the lever system. Our objectives are to define a lever and how a lever operating a mechanical advantage differs from one operating at a disadvantage, and to name the three types of lever systems and identify the effort, fulcrum, and load in each, and what type of activity each is best for. Our body, joints specifically, is made up of an entire system of levers. A lever itself is a rigid bar, in this case a bone that moves about a fixed point called a fulcrum. That fixed point would be a joint. If it could be an elbow, a knee, etc. So that is your fulcrum. The next component is the effort, which is the force applied to move the lever. In this case, it is supplied by a muscle contraction. And finally, the load or resistance. So this could be a bone. If all you're doing is flexing that joint, think of doing a bicep curl. Or if you add a dumbbell to your hand or a cuff weight on your foot, these are all examples of a load. The three components of a lever system are the fulcrum, effort, and load. A lever allows our effort to either move a heavier load or move a load faster or farther, depending on the position of the fulcrum. If a load is close to the fulcrum and the effort is applied farther from the fulcrum, a small effort can move a large load. This is considered a power lever. If we look at this example of a person trying to move a large rock, you can see that the load is closer to the fulcrum and the effort, or the man that is pushing down on the stick, is farther away. Now granted, this is a large load, only moved a very small distance, but the effort required to do so is also minimal. This is operating at a mechanical advantage. Now in the case of a speed lever, the load is farther from the fulcrum, with the effort being closer. A good example of a speed lever is shown in this slide, where a heavy acrobat jumps onto the short end of a seesaw and is able to propel his lighter partner high into the air. This type of lever system operates at a mechanical disadvantage because a larger effort, the body weight of the man jumping off the stool, is required to move a smaller load or the smaller acrobat on the other end. So remember, levers operating at a mechanical advantage are power levers, and those operating at a mechanical disadvantage are speed levers. Depending on the relative position of our three elements, the effort, fulcrum, and load, a lever belongs in one of three classes. In a first-class lever, the fulcrum is in between the effort and the load. As you can see, a seesaw is an obvious example, but another example would be a pair of scissors. The hinge of the scissors, or fulcrum, is directly in between the handles and the blades. Now, as we learned in the previous slide, the position of the fulcrum, whether it is closer to the effort or to the load, will affect its mechanical advantage or disadvantage. If we look at this example of how we can directly apply this in our own bodies, we see in this case, lifting your head off of your chest is an example of a first-class lever. The fulcrum here is your atlanto-occipital joint, remembering that the atlas bone, or C1, allows us to shake our head yes. The load is the weight of our head, and the effort is the muscle contraction of our posterior neck muscles, moving the head upward. Okay, so now a second-class lever, the load is in between the fulcrum and the effort. A great example of this is a wheelbarrow. The wheels are the fulcrum, the load is the contents of the barrel, and the effort is the handle at the end. All second-class levers work in a mechanical advantage because little effort is required to move a large load. But here, the sacrifice is speed. Think about being in a wheelbarrow race with a partner. You're able to lift the load of their body fairly easily, but is more difficult to move quickly. In the body, second-class levers are fairly uncommon, but a good example of this would be a calf raise or coming up on the balls of your feet. The fulcrum or joint here is the ball of your foot, the effort is the calf muscles pulling upward on the heel, and the load is the weight of your body. In a third-class lever, the effort is applied between the fulcrum and the load. As you can see, a pair of tweezers or tongs that you use to turn food are a good example of third-class levers. The fulcrum is the end of the tweezers where they are connected. You apply the effort midway down by pushing down on the tongs or the tweezers, and the load is whatever object you're picking up farthest at the end. Most of the skeletal muscles in our body act in this third-class lever system. This is mainly because of the muscle insertion or effort is generally in between the fulcrum or joint and the load that is being moved. Even without the weight, in the hands like we see here, the load would still be the midpoint of the radius and ulna in this case. These levers are speedy, so that means they operate at a mechanical disadvantage. To summarize and try to digest what we just learned, the difference in positioning of the three elements determine what type of lever it is and if it works at a mechanical advantage or disadvantage. In mechanical advantage, let me back that up. In a mechanical disadvantage, you can generate speed and range of motion, but force is lost. In a mechanical advantage, you are able to generate strength, but speed is lost. We see examples of this everywhere around us in everyday life, and hopefully you'll be aware of some of them now that you have gone through this lesson. I know the topic can be a little bit much and a lot to digest and can get confusing, so if you're unsure about any of this, I would first encourage you to read your book. If that doesn't provide enough clarification, you can always email me to set up a Zoom meeting and we can tackle it there. Thanks everybody, and I'll see you soon.